Welcome to I Know How You Feel, a podcast for common experiences not so commonly shared. This is a platform for growth, connection, and mindful conversation. Today on the podcast, we have Lindsay. Lindsay is an ER nurse, skier, surfer, and outdoor lover with bionic hips and a growth mindset. Let's connect with Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
I don't need to explain to you guys at what level COVID-19 changed our society and the impact it had on our mental health. Lindsay was an ER nurse during the pandemic, and she is going to share her experience with us. Before we get to that, I just want to chat a little bit about your journey into nursing. Did you always want to be a nurse, or was there an experience that led you there?
I dabbled with it when I was young. I was really a ski bum for a long time. But when I was a little girl, I was hospitalized at Boston Children's Center, and my doctor was a female, and I was like obsessed with her. And so when I got discharged, I carried around a little doctor bag everywhere. Just, I guess from a young age, I did have a desire, but it took me a while to come around to it. Um, I ended up becoming a ski patroller, and that's what made me realize I really liked the medical side of that job and decided to pursue nursing.
What was your first experience as a nurse like? Did you go right into ER or did you do something else?
I went straight into ER. I did like a new grad program. I did take like a per diem while I waited for that to start, which was at a psychiatric hospital. It was PRN, like pick up as needed. And I ended up keeping that job for a while into 2021 when I could no longer pick up any shifts because of the pandemic and my other job.
Psychiatric hospital would be, I mean, I'm not a nurse, obviously, but I feel like that would be a really intense experience. What was that like, and how did you take care of your mental health while you were working as a nurse there?
Honestly, like what I've realized is that when I'm in the ER, the psych patients that I get are actually coming in at a more like critical phase. They're like in their like full on in their psychosis. And sometimes that is actually more, I've had to learn, you know, how to kind of cope with that mentally. Whereas at the psych hospital, people are there or they're just getting there, they're settling in, or they've been there for a while and they're more stable. So usually they'll come from the emergency department where they had their most critical phase. Though there was like a critical stabilization floor, that was definitely the most intense floor. I definitely had people threatening my life and people somehow getting on the ceiling and turning the water on and flooding the whole hospital. Like,
That's wild. Did you ever, at any point, did you rethink nursing after that experience? Like, I don't know if this is for me.
maybe the mental health part, but, or like the critical, floor, but not really, no. It was really during the pandemic that I rethought it.
Where were you when the
Like,
pandemic hit?
so I was in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I had just taken a new job at the University of Utah in January of 2020. So I feel pretty fortunate to have moved from a community hospital to a level one trauma center because the resources were incredible. And I was able to learn so much about, emergency management. Because we had multiple instances, not just the pandemic. There was a huge earthquake. There was all of the riots. So we would go on lockdown and just different situations that happened during that time that were really intense and really scary. I feel like the world is ending.
Absolutely. Talk to us about when you were at Salt Lake, during the pandemic in the level 1 trauma center. What was that like? But then also, what kind of precautions and protections were in place for healthcare workers, or was there a lack of those things in the time because it was so new?
At first, there was concern that we didn't have enough supplies. I guess the U did have like a backstop of hospital masks and N95s, but we were asked to reuse our 95 and hospital masks the whole shift. We did have a COVID unit that was completely separate, and we had PAPRs. So that's the hood, and it connects to like an airflow, goes over your head, and you look like a little space person. And then we would wear our gown, gloves, all the things. But we would just clean the papper off when we had to wear those. And I think that was mandatory on that unit at that time because we really didn't know enough about the disease. Um, and we would just wipe them down with these purple wipes that are so bad for you. Honestly, I felt like my asthma got worse during that time. Another story, but yeah, just we're all reusing it. Some people actually did have like skin problems from reusing the same ones. Like it was like a thing where all of our skin was breaking out, or somebody even got a staph infection. Like it was pretty crazy.
Was that all from the fear that there was gonna be a shortage of supplies, or was there actually a shortage of supplies?
There was actually a shortage of supplies. These companies that sell us our, supplies, they're supplying not just us, but so many other hospitals throughout the country, throughout the world. Some of them are global. So we could only get so many boxes of supplies at a time. But luckily, we did have that backstock that got us through until they were able to make more supplies. I mean, people were making like hand sanitizer out of tequila. And so we would sanitize our hands and we're like, ew, that must be from a distillery.
Bad.
Yeah. And up in like places like Idaho, it seemed like the pandemic barely happened, whereas my experience was very different. So the mask thing, eventually we did get more stock. Eventually we were able to wear more than one N95 a day, but that definitely took some time. It was a couple of years, maybe a year and a half even.
Wow. What were some of the, like, hardest cases that you worked on during that time, or some of the, I guess, sickest people that came through with COVID?
Oh, I mean, there's so many, and I had so many last conversations with people where I was their last conversation where I did a lot of therapy, and one of the things that I was able to conclude was like their family couldn't be there, but I was able to be their family in those moments. And that's something to feel good about. And I'm so lucky to have been there for them, because otherwise it just eats you away. But I did have this one particular patient where really wasn't showing that many signs of COVID, but had lung cancer. The son was on the way out from California to see the family and help out with that patient. Now he had like a newborn baby at home and wife, all that. And the results came back, but the doctor was in a trauma. And I was like, I need to like tell them right away because that they're tested COVID positive. Because when you have lung cancer or lung disease and COVID at like those beginning, you know, I call it the OG COVID, and then Delta, I think was the next one. Really, if you had any kind of lung disease, like those are the people that really suffered and did not make it. And yeah, other comorbidities as well. but those are the ones that kind of went fast. So I told the patient, they were kind of in shock, and they were able to kind of have time while the doctor was away. And finally we all went in there, and they're like, well, we just want to go home, and he's, wanted to die peacefully. And that was like, they were just the nicest people. They were just accepting. All of a sudden they were like fighting before and not planning on going on any kind of hospice care, but they had just decided that this is it. And I walked that patient and his wife out to the car, and we were like all in tears because this is the end. But he did get to go home and die with his family, and his son had to turn around, so his son didn't get to be there or say goodbye, but he did get to be with his family. So many other patients did not get to experience that and be home with their family. So many others, their family wasn't even allowed inside. The family was, you know, calling from the phone or FaceTiming. And sometimes they didn't even get to see them or talk to them because they were just, you know, their shortness of breath was increasing quickly. And all of a sudden they're on BiPAP, and then all of a sudden they're intubated. Then they're going to the ICU, and all of a sudden they're gone.
That would be really
So,
hard. I think that's a really beautiful way to think about it in the midst of all that chaos is that you were the person that got to be there for a lot of people because that would be really hard as a family member to not be with your family while they were dying. Something that was really confusing at the time and there wasn't a lot of information on. Can you talk to us
yeah.
about your experience with like the testing and nasal swabbing part of the pandemic and then vaccine requirements when they started?
Oh yeah, of course. The swabs, that's just different, information continued to come out. But at first they thought you needed to like put the swab in each nostril for 20 seconds. And not only was that a little intense, but so many people were getting bloody noses, and then they couldn't discharge. And you're like, well, like, we just caused a bloody nose. Like, 20 seconds is insane. Also, doesn't need to go absolutely that deep. Eventually, it did change down to 5 seconds, and yeah, you still need to go deep, but you don't need to touch their brain necessarily. And that would always change, as time went on, you know, and they look at, okay, is this absolutely necessary? We can like change the protocol within the hospital. So you really have to like adapt to all the new protocols coming out. And it was changing weekly. And new information was coming every week. It was, we had to keep up with it. It's hard to keep like anyone on the outside of healthcare up to date with it. When it came to the vaccine, as a healthcare worker, at first it was, I think, anyone over 65 with comorbidities. Then it was just anyone over 65. Eventually, I think healthcare workers got in there. And I know that myself and a lot of my colleagues, um, even like my sister, like I got that shot and I was just crying, with literally sobbing with relief. For me, it was a relief. I know a lot of people feel differently about the vaccine outside, even in healthcare, outside of healthcare. Some people left healthcare because they didn't want to get it. Because the mRNA vaccine is just so new, and a lot of people didn't understand it, and I still don't think they understand it. And it's a very important vaccine. I mean, they're learning how to cure cancer with it, or it's a very cool science. And I mean, it was just a huge relief to get that first dose. And yeah, you can still get COVID with it. I think that was another educational moment where we're like, oh, people think that you can't get COVID still. It's just supposed to lessen the symptoms and prevent you from death, which that's what most vaccines do. And some have eradicated disease, but COVID is like the flu where it's going to be around forever. We still get, in healthcare, we still get flu shots yearly because it is still dangerous. um, and just this COVID is the same, but it has become this politicized vaccine in healthcare.
I definitely think because of the intensity of COVID and everything, I do think a lot of things around it did get politicized and there was a lot of division around it. And I really appreciate you explaining all of that to us. I got swabbed a couple times for COVID, and I remember looking at the nurse afterwards, like she personally victimized me because they put those swabs so far up. So that must have been a really tough job in that moment, especially kids, I can imagine, just because it hurts so bad at the beginning. But like you said, having to stay up on the new information every single week that you were getting because it was such a new pandemic and everything, that would be so overwhelming. In the midst of all this chaos, how were you feeling? I mean, did you have a chance to check in with yourself emotionally, or you just like were overloaded and going till you couldn't go anymore?
Um, Honestly, yeah, I was pretty overloaded. I had days where I didn't think I'd be able to get out of bed. Not only did they require because I was pretty new there. I At one point I had 16 extra on-call shifts in a 3-month period, and my pay didn't change. So not only was I like living paycheck to paycheck, I was in the stress of that while everyone else was making more on unemployment than I was going into the hospital and with all these extra shifts. Like that was miserable. And then having to deal with the emotional side of this job, of not sure what's going to happen, who's going to make it. Like, it was just a heavy load to carry, and I didn't know how to carry it. And, I did what I could on the outside. I mean, I was, speaking with therapists weekly, and I got a mountain bike and was going mountain biking like when we were allowed to. At first we weren't allowed to do anything. But yeah, just exercise was kind of my key to working through it. Sometimes I wanted to lay on the cement. My roommate was a pediatric resident, and luckily we got to hang out together and kind of commiserate because she was, going pediatric ER, so she was kind of going through that residency. Well, I was at the mainly adult ER. We get peds too, but not the same as the pediatric hospital. But yeah, it was nice to have that companionship. I wouldn't say that the relationship I had at the time was thriving, but I felt support from a lot of people. Maybe not my parents sometimes due to their politics and um, they didn't want to get the vaccine. That was really hard for me. Um, Knowing that my mom had cancer. She's in remission, but I just wanted her to be safe. It was the whole politicized thing. So that was a very emotional part for me. That was, there's just so many layers of the emotions and the experience of it. But I do find that having people to talk to that were going through the same thing, they became a family. My ER, we still get together once or twice a year and do these big bike trips, or we try to get together, and that's pretty amazing to still have that camaraderie. It was really hard.
That would be really tough. How did things change for you once the pandemic was deemed over? Did you stay in nursing?
I did, yeah. So 2 of March, I went through a breakup. I actually got COVID for the first time. And yeah, things went sour. Well, I was like sick as a dog. And I was like, what am I doing? Like laying there, like so sick. I'm making no money here. Everybody else like is making money travel nursing. Why don't I try it out? So I took a travel contract in San Francisco, and um, I would float between 3 ERs, and I loved it. It was still a lot of COVID, a lot of psych. I not only entered the fentanyl endemic, like truly in San Francisco. So I added that on top of COVID. Yeah, after that, I did a whole year there. And after that, I kind of like, I took some time, I did some traveling, think the world was open again, and just kind of healed because I was pretty burnt out after all of that. I think it slowly took time to realize that, COVID's just like normalizing. I think people are more accepting that it is real. That was a huge one. And I haven't had too many people like tell me I'm not allowed to COVID swab them because I'm going to put a tracker in their nose or something like that. So I do feel like as the pandemic has waned, people are more accepting and realize, some of these conspiracies behind it are time to move on.
Being on the front lines of that and just seeing everybody's reaction and dealing with so much. Looking back, how did this change you as a person? Did it change anything in your personal and professional life with boundaries? Or yeah, I'm just curious about, like, how it just shifted you.
I definitely have had to create more boundaries. I felt so burnt out for a while that I didn't want to maybe go back to nursing. I did have to learn how to say no or create boundaries. I also had to learn not everybody is going to like be on board with getting the vaccine and I felt yeah, I was like pushing for it, but I had lost some friendships and relationships. Well, I like have the need to like still like keep stay informed and then educate my family and my friends. I try not to push it the way I did. So I ask them to respect my boundaries and at least hear me out. And then I also try to respect their boundaries if they're standing strong in their beliefs. But I do request, like, hey, let's, you know, research this and come back and have a conversation. I think I had to stop night shifts. That was a huge boundary. It's been hard because there's so many more night shift positions open. And I'm really pushing to like keep my mental health intact. I think my doctor will drop me if I go back to night shifts. He's going to just disown me as a patient. I think just continuing like as I remain in the emergency department, I do think it's good to continue to check in with my, therapist once a month and kind of see how things are going. I definitely I feel like I've grown a lot. I've grown in certain ways in my career. Definitely in the mental side of it. I don't feel like I don't bring the work home in my mind as much that I'm able to really like leave it there. I felt like during the pandemic it was so hard that it was overcoming my whole life. That's pretty unhealthy. So that's something I had to really work on in therapy. And now I really feel like I put a lot of work in. And for the most part, like I can leave it there. If I have a stressful day, like without like giving deep details, sometimes my partner is like, anything exciting today? And I'll go on a little rant and then I'm like, okay, I feel good. That's like all I needed, and I feel like, okay, I can move on with my day now.
I really appreciate you sharing with us what you learned and how it changed you. I think it changed a lot of people, but especially the frontline workers and the healthcare workers. And I hope everyone who is listening heard Lindsay's experience and were reminded that we can have conversations with love and respect. A lot of things are getting more politicized, and there seems to be a lot more division, but we can choose to make it different. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us. It is important to take care of yourself and to go to therapy and to set boundaries with anybody in your life. I really appreciate you sharing that with us and sharing your story. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to season one. I appreciate you showing up every other week and listening to other stories and learning with me. Stay tuned for season two.